I was talking to you about my kick. I know a few of you lost the stream there, so we will just carry on. I was talking you through the fact that I have a frequency shifter on my kick, a compressor on my kick, and a stereo imager on my kick. Again, just briefly to recap, the frequency shifter adds a slight variation every other kick. So if you look at it with it off, you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and if I turn it back on again, and I have it set at a rate of a half, so every other kick is doing something slightly different, and I find in certain tracks that just helps the groove ever so slightly. And then I have a compressor running, a waves compressor to compress that kick a little, and I have a stereo imager showing that I'm sending that kick down the middle of the stereo image because I don't want that kick to be going very wide in the stereo field. I used again what I said at the start, and I'll just repeat that in case anyone missed it. I use on certain occasions a fair bit Ableton drum racks for sounds, not just drums as well, but kicks too, kicks and other sounds. And this occasion I'm using a sample. I kind of done a brief demo as to, if you're not used to using drum racks, how you use them. You will drop sounds into empty slots, trigger them using whichever method you usually use to trigger your samples, be it MIDI keyboard or however you like to trigger. And each sample you drop into this slot, you get your set of sample controls, your volumes, transpositions. Often I said that myself and other producers I know will reuse sounds from time to time. And if you have a kick, now this is the kick that I'm using in this track, that we used in this track. You want to reuse a sound, you might next time transpose it up a semitone or something. If you can see down here, I'm just using my Mac keyboard to transpose that. Here we go. I believe at the start it was on -2. The reason why transposition in the kick is really useful, when you're starting a new project, maybe you're reusing the kick, you would, your bass sound, your bass loop might be different. So, you're going to want to often play with the transposition in a kick to make that fit. Obviously, you can also play with transposition on the bass as well, but I guess it's just about my tips and tricks, so that's what I do. Yeah, I'll try that from time to time. So yeah, we got our kick here, and as I said at the start of the stream, one thing I've been kind of noticing a bit in my music this year, the past couple of years, is that I've really been concentrating on the bottom end first, get the bass right, get the kick right, and then the rest will kind of build up on top like a cake, I guess. With your bass and your kick at the bottom, your mid bass, your fills, your snares, your hats at the top, and then your samples and things at the very top. And that way, when you take all that kind of mid and high end energy out, does the track still kind of work? And that's what I'm talking you through now. So let's go on to some bass. This is one of the first bass lines. I'll take you back to the start of the track, when the track first drops. So this is my first bass line that's coming in. That's like the main kind of bass line, if you like. Now I wanted to, you'll be noticing you're in quite a plain environment right now, because we tried to set the stream up right from my studio, but that was not possible because the Wi-Fi was terrible connection. So we're in an alternate location, but I don't have the couple of things I did want to show you regarding bass. So I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures now of things that I often use. First being this thing, Subboom Bass, really cool, powerful bass machine. This is just an image, nothing clicks on here, but just wanted you to see the software, Subboom Bass 2 actually. This piece of hardware is called a Critter and Guitari Bolsa bass, B-O-L-S-A bass. this is a great simple bass machine that I use via MIDI. A lot of the stuff I work in MIDI, you know, as you can see with them drum racks I've shown you before and other things I'll show you just now. I do tend to bounce things to audio as I'm working, and so that's why you kind of see in this arrangement I've shown you some of these pieces of bass and stuff I've recorded and then made them audio. So that's why I'm showing you these pictures of the stuff I use to make those basses and stuff, because I wanted you to get an idea of what I'm using. Massive, again, native instruments. I use a lot of native instruments. Plugins in my music is probably the thing I use the most. Hopefully there'll be some examples in that arrangement that we get to as well. If not, I'll probably add in a couple of things to show you some of my favourite stuff. So yeah, let's get back to this because time goes on. So this is the first bass line that comes in here. Again, I send that down the middle of the stereo image. I EQ that quite heavily. I EQ everything quite heavily. And I compress my bass here. I use a max bass. So let's look one by one. I'm just going to turn that down a little. I'm boosting the bottom frequencies here, and I'm entirely cutting the tops because, again, as you'll see, I've got other sounds happening in this track, and one of the things I tend to do is think of my track as like this kind of cake kind of effect. So I don't want my pieces of the cake, my different layers, to be competing with each other for energy in the arrangement. So I will kind of EQ and think about how my bass is using the bottom end, mids, and so on up to the top. Not entirely. You do need things to mix and mesh, but as a general rule, I'm thinking that way when I'm making a track. Here you can see another bass line. The second bass line's come in, which is the bass line that comes in after that drop. Again, I'm compressing that. I'm side chaining that using the kick as the input source for the side chain. What side chaining does is, as the kick hits, which you can see here is the kind of input of the kick, you can see that here, that's feeding in to the compressor, and it's just ducking the bass at the point where the kick is hitting. And what that achieves is it allows you to get a smoother kick pattern and less competition for energy in the low end when they're playing together. Obviously, that side chain technique is not just a low end technique. I'm just saying low end because that's what it's on right now. And then max bass is also on that bass line. That's another Waves plugin I use, and that's really interesting because it can take your quite subby bass. If I turn it off, that's the kind of source sound with the EQ and compression. But when I add max bass, what max bass does is it adds artificial harmonics to that sub bass, and hope you agree, it actually makes it sound more bassy and more clean without actually adding any more bass. You know, and I'll experiment invariably with the frequency that the effect starts from, and the kind of amount of divisional bass and the amount of the max bass new sound that's added in from track to track. You know, I don't believe there's any hard and fast rules when you're going about making music. It's just what works, you know, what works for that track in particular. You can see now we've moved on to a new bass line here on this track. That's even more of a kind of another subby kind of sound. Again, kind of sound shade to the kick. I've left more top in it this time. Again, no rules, you know. This one I just fancied leaving more top in the bass. Not there's a whole lot coming through, but nevertheless I left it. Max bass again on this track, doing that same effect for me. Adding some harmonics to give you the effect of more bass without needing to add more bass, especially good for various kind of systems that you might listen to the track on. So by this stage, we've kind of listened to some kick, some bass, a couple of different bass lines, the original one here, and this kind of subby one that comes in later on. Now, this is something that I use a lot, technique I use a lot. Again, something I read about time ago and just think it works with your bass lines. So you got your bass line there, original bass, and what this is, it's actually quite hard to hear. Ah, thank you, Ben. Brilliant. This is what I was talking about. We're all here to learn. So that's something I'm thinking about. Often I will just keep it on the default setting, which I'm guessing is, let's have a look. Post rather than pre, side chain to the kick. So on here, this is basically probably post effects because I haven't done anything different to that kick so far as I can see. So that, yeah, that's coming up post. In my mind, I guess I would always use post because I would want that kick sound, the entirety of that kick sound that's coming out in the track, to affect the sound that, you know, that I was having it affect, so to have it affect that bass. I guess one scenario where you might use pre, and something maybe I'll try in the future, is if you really just want the rhythm of that sound to affect your kind of sound that you're affecting. If it's just a rhythm thing, maybe you would use the pre, because then, you know, you're going to get a more of a representation of the actual rhythm. I hope that answers the question. And then yes, because the Andrew just clicked in and give more tact to your bass. That's exactly why I do that. It's almost inaudible. I'll just turn it up a bit so you can hear. And what that is, that's just a pitched up copy of the original bass. And if I take it off, I hope you can hear how it just loses a bit. Maybe not in the, I think it is attack, but I think it also just a tiny bit more depth and stuff like that. You know, it really does add something. That little bass click. That's something I do, you know, on all of my bass lines. You know, sometimes I forget to do it, and I think, why does that sound? You know, and then I should do the click trick, and I do the click trick, and yeah, then it, you know, invariably gets a bit better. So what we have here, another couple of basses to show you. Again, probably I've showed you that one, and then this one here called bass high. Now this one's really kind of complementing bass 2 because they go together. And you can see on this one, bass high, I've taken out quite a lot of the kind of subby low on that and left it more in on bass 2, so that this one is getting its space to shine, if you like, and they work quite nicely together. So then if we move on, again looking at this particular section, you can see these two sounds here, synth bass 1 and synth bass 2 are used here, so let's check out what they do. Okay, yeah, I recognise this sound. You'll know that sound if you know the track. And again, I've done a high version of that to kind of, again, I've really messed with the EQ up there, put it right up here, just to really pull out a real kind of bit of the high, just to add to the attack and add to the space on it. start to put. Something I do often in Ableton is, I don't know if you use this, Alt with your left thumb and close, hit on one of your tracks and you'll close all your tracks, and similarly if you want to open up all your tracks, Alt with your left thumb and close there with your mouse pad. So yeah, we've kind of got to the point where we've shown kick there, 1, 2, 3, 4 different bass lines doing different stuff. Later on in the track you got this similar pattern, earlier in the track you got this. Let's put that in for you. So that's your bass patterns. One of the things I like to do in my basses in Ableton, well, when I make my music, let's say, is how many semitones am I usually doing that? Usually I would do that enough so that you can just tell it's very different, you know. I mean, actually, to be honest, this is funny. This is not actually pitched up at all. I must have just messed with the sound some other way, because look, this is audio. I think I must have bounced that down already. So forgive me. The transposition you'll see here is naught. I think I must have already done that when I bounced this particular part. But if I was, you know, well, let's show you. If we just do a quick copy of this bass track, if I was gonna kind of do that from scratch. No, not a copy. I should have duplicated, shouldn't I? There we go. These. So we're going to have two exactly the same right now. If I wanted to, the first thing you need to do is this. And then I would use the transient thing to cut that right down to make it a very short sound. And then I would EQ it to take out the bass. Take off the max bass because you obviously don't need that. Probably take off the compressor as well. And then take it right down. And that was just a quick and dirty. Obviously I've done other things to it on this version that I played you earlier because it's a bit of a different sound, but the principle is the same that I wanted to show you. That's how I would usually do it. I would duplicate the track. I would reduce the transients using the transient shaper there. So you're just using a tiny snippet of each warp marker and transpose up and then take out all of the bass. I did that on a track the other day. I did it exactly that way. So we'll just get rid of that. So yeah, we had got to the point of showing you the kicks and the bass. So let's talk about the next layer of the cake, if you like. This is snares, and I'm going to bring these two tracks up as well. So let's start with the main snare. Now I've got two channels selected. Okay, there we go. So snare one, and this is an audio part. So that most probably came from a drum loop. There we go. Yeah, this is a drum loop. And this is drum loop, something I'll often do. If you just give me 1 second, I'll just grab a section of this and loop it so you see what's happening with this part. Here we go, see, here's your loop. So what I wanted to show you there actually was something here. Look, if you look at this part here, this is the audio. So what I've did, it was a more complete drum loop before. Here you go back. But obviously what I felt was better for this track was chopping that down and just using the 2 and 4. And then if you look later on, you'll kind of see what I meant when I say I often bounce things down again later, because by the stage I kind of fast forward to do before, it looks like I decided to bounce that down as an audio part. I can't find that now, but it's not actually important to see that. I just wanted to kind of show you the kind of process there. So that's the snare. This is also, I'd say, part of my mid kind of layer of the cake, if you like, is this loop. And you can see from the arrangement, this loop's going through a large part of the track, but at quite a low level. I think that open hi-hat there is quite a important feature of the track, and that's where that comes from. You can see it there. Again, in this loop, at some stage I've decided, you can see these walk markers I've just introduced, because originally that loop was probably just a little bit, the time of that loop was probably not quite perfect for the stuff I was trying to put it with. So I've introduced a couple of markers here just to adjust that loop. If you're not used to working with the walk markers, you can basically change the timing of a loop. If I wanted this hit here to be a little bit later, I would lock that one, and then I'm going to do Command and 4 to turn off the snap, and I could just make that a tiny bit later. Sorry, showed you the wrong thing there. Let's do it this hit here. I wanted this to be a tiny bit later. There, just a tiny bit. You should have heard that. And within a groove of a track, that kind of thing can be really, really, really powerful. And there's a question there from Andrew: are you using Fab Filter EQs or Ableton EQs? EQ wise, I use Ableton EQs, and I use Waves EQs. So I often use the Waves. Which one is it called? Plugins, Waves. I use the Q1 or Q2 a lot of the time, just give you 2 points to equalize from. Yeah, I'm quite simple with my EQing. Sometimes I'll use some Fab stuff, but not the EQs. I think I've got Volcano just to add a little bit of unexpected kind of twists to the sounds and stuff. But EQ wise, Ableton and Waves. So I've showed you the kind of snare layer. I've also have four channels of fills, and I think in this track brigade the fills really do add quite a lot to it. So there's one. This is using again a drum rack. I would have dropped on this drum rack like lots and lots of different snare sounds was my idea. When you're in a drum rack, you can use this to scroll up and down the different slots. So I put lots of snare sounds there, and then kind of used various ones. Again, I did a similar thing here. This, although it's with I've dropped a sample here. Let's listen to this. Disco Volante, quickly there. Any thoughts on linear phase EQing? Hopefully my linear phase EQing sounds really good, because like I said earlier, I don't know every technique. That was something I will do some research on. I don't use it myself that often, I have to say. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it could be useful given the right scenario. So if we listen back to this fill here, I hope that was okay, Disco Volante. I basically don't know the technique, so I can't really comment on it very much, but hopefully we can move on, and I'll do a bit of reading myself. So some fills here. This is another loop that I've used in the track. Again, just pulled out, a tiny bit of the loop for the purposes of a snare fill. You can see here the loop itself. If I play it, that's all that's playing from the loop. And then additionally, I've also, in the arrangement, I've also used the speaker on off automation to not even play this all the time. So you'll hear this in the track, but you'll only hear it here and here. I do this a lot when I come on to the latter parts of arranging my tracks, because what you find often, hopefully maybe you find it too, you'll make a track, you'll kind of use the session view to make a track, and then when you've kind of recorded into the arrange window, you've kind of got a bit of a linear track, and it's all kind of playing at the same time. One way I use, as well as obviously chopping bits out physically, like chopping parts out like that, I also use the kind of either the volume or the mixer automation, to literally go through with my pen and play or not play certain bits of clips. I find that quite a useful technique for getting detail into my tracks. So yeah, we've got 2 more of those snare fill channels. I'm not going to run through every single one of them. I'm going to move on to the hats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 channels of different hats there, doing the kind of hat energy. Let's have a listen to those all together. Again, when you look at my hats, you'll generally see bottoms EQ'd out, some sound toys on this one. Again, this would have been a phase plugin to introduce a slightly different phase. If I'm going to have a couple of different hats playing at the same time, I'm going to want to make sure that they've got different phase effects and things, just to play with how they sit together, because you don't want them clashing too much. This is like a closed hi-hat. This is, listen here, it's doing something else here, this part. Again, this is another drum rack. You can see here, I've put a lot of sounds on this, a lot of hi-hats on this drum rack, and just done different kind of patterns with them, quite random, you could probably say. I've got a question here from Andrew. Do you use much for send returns or just channel processing? I hardly do any send and returns. A reverb on this, a delay, pretty basic. They're the ones that Ableton loads with when you start a project. And then here I've got one thing called a tornado, which I was going to show you a bit later on. So yeah, I kind of do a lot of mine inline, or inserts, sorry. And then just add a couple of bits. I mean, varies from track to track. Some might have more send and returns, but certainly this one doesn't. So I was just talking you through the hats here. So our 5 channels of hats. Another one has 3. If we show this one here, and that's my open hat. Again, that's another drum rack in Ableton. Again, similar treatment EQ. I've got a Native Instruments guitar rig on it. That probably just makes it a little bit hotter, the sound. Let's try it with and without. There we go. So that it actually kind of EQs it down a little bit, but also I think probably makes it sound slightly smoother. I would have decided it sat better in the mix with that. Another track here. Again, this is quite a tight, closed hat, you know. This one is actually the one that has a tornado on it. Tornado is a really interesting plugin that I picked up a little while ago by a company called Sugar Bytes, I believe, yeah. And I'm using it quite conservatively here. Basically what this is doing, you can see here, it's just kind of cutting into the sound now and again. I mean, this is with a mixer. This is the mixer on again. The technique I said about before, it will come out and go on again. And the tornado is just adding. Be honest with you, this might not be adding much. I mean, all these dials are on 0. Let me just show you while it's actually playing what tornado can do, because on this project it looks like it's doing nothing unless I've automated it. Let's see. Okay. There we go. So you can see it's a way of introducing quite a bit of variation quite quickly on some of your on some of the sounds, and I do admit I do like to use it on hats quite a lot. But yeah, interestingly, in Brigade it was on there, and I don't think it was actually doing anything. But that's fine, because that's what we're here to do, is to learn. I had a question here from Ben on drum rec. When shortening your samples, does sample and fading does leaving snap pull more of a natural groove in the mix when shortening the sample? Let's go to drum rack. I'll probably look at one of the hats here. This one. Let's look at this one. So this hat here, if we shorten the sample, what, like this you mean? Often I do, if I'm shortening, sometimes I tend to use the fade out, because it might have a slightly more musical kind of effect. Certainly, if, you know, depending on the tempo of the track, if it was a much faster track, you know, you might want to make that shorter so it closed at the same time as the next beat, you know, if you're doing this off hi-hat thing. In this one, it seems I decided that I was happy that it kind of, you know, bled across and it was the right tempo already. I hope that answered your question, Ben. So then moving on to the pad sound that was playing when we first started. This is using which plugin? Surprise, let's see. An LCD Bookham pad, part of a sample pack I think I found a while ago. Bookham drum bass hero. Again, played in via MIDI. In part of the Bond, is it in the instructions of sharing the project file? Maybe not quite yet. But I know I did a similar thing on some of my previous releases, the ones on Bandcamp. So maybe I'll do some Bandcamp stuff again eventually for you. So here we've got, yeah, as I said, a MIDI pot playing. Again, EQ'd heavily with some reverb, which is automated, enabled to, and I use a lot of automation. If you click through that automation here, you'll see quite a modest amount there, but sometimes some of my automation, you see a hell of a lot going on. If I expand all the tracks, you get an idea of some automation that I do. This one here, next one off. Again, though, like I said earlier, when I do often bounce things down as I'm working in audio, just to preserve my CPU, and also just to when I've decided something's working, I'll bounce it down, and then, you know, maybe add in a bit of variation as I bounce it, and then you know, the track almost has built-in variation with you having to keep on automating because you've built variation into audio parts. I do that a lot. And then we had an effects track. Let's see what this one is. Very simple, kind of audio effects in the background with reverb, and then the sample, the kind of vocal kind of sample. Something I found on my hard drive randomly. And then again, one of the things I would have done on this, I've got 3 of these here, look, sample 1, 2 and 3, they're all using the same kind of part, but I wanted to show you on this one. I would have used a transient shaper here, be it into Avian, just to shorten that right down, make it more percussive, so it goes with a rhythm. This one again, just cutting the parts down. This one. And then at one stage you got kind of a lot of fill before it all drops. I think that's here. That's this one. And again, that's an excerpt of that chopped up with again just a simple. This is where I use a send look, a simple Ableton delay on the send, just giving it a bit of a tail and a bit of automation, just so that it's kind of bleed into the drop there. You can hear it kind of echoing off there into the distance. And then yeah, that kind of gets us to the end of all the parts. If you look along the right here, I'm not sure whether any of you use this function. I use it fairly often, the kind of micro shifting within Ableton to shift the timing of parts by like a frame, or was it millisecond, ms I believe it is. Again, when I'm working on the groove of a track, usually in the session view, I'll be playing with this constantly just to get exactly the right grooves. I find it helps a lot with my groove. Firstly, the thing I showed you when I will move warp markers, transients on part of loops to get my groove just right. I'll also use this kind of functionality with shifting things by microseconds in how they play, because again that can give quite a lot of different kind of effects in your groove. You can see here I've used quite a lot of different, I haven't left it all on 0. Just set to use FX samples with VST. So yeah, I use Sound Toys plugins. I showed you one before called the Phase Mistress from Sound Toys. They have a really good sample pack. I use a Volcano by Fab Filter, yeah, Volcano. I used a lot of Ableton plugins, effects, and Sugarworks. Tornado is something I use a lot on my hats. They're the ones I use the most. But like I said earlier, I often use the built-in Ableton, especially for the nuts and bolts of mixing and things like that. When Dizzy asking about samples, I look around on YouTube. I have untold CDs that I've ripped over the years, like that are just sitting on my hard drive, hidden away, and then I kind of just look through and just see what I find. Really, I like to be very much, random about these things and just find stuff as I find it. Really, it can be a struggle to find the right thing, but from time to time, things just work. Sometimes they don't. I also have Noise, the plugin called Noise, Noiz. That's a sample library it's a VST that connects to various sample libraries online, and that can be quite useful. It actually works as a VST, but you have to have a web connection, and you can download differently categorized samples as you go from the net, and that can be quite good for sparks of inspiration as well. Just have a little look here through a little list of kind of stuff that I wrote down before that I wanted to show you about the track, and I think I pretty much showed you a lot of it. Gone through how I automate, go through how I use loops and change the markers in loops and I'll cut into the loops to kind of get the correct bit that we want. Bass clicks in the background, using transient shapers on loops. Yeah, cool, nice one, Ben. Yeah, agree. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about arrangement as well. I always kind of know that a track's going to be all right when it looks a bit like this. Lots of gaps. Because like I was saying before you really start to cut into a track and really get to the nitty gritty of the arrangement, things can be quite linear. Occasionally I've had a sample that has everything everywhere, and a track that has everything everywhere, and it turns out okay. But certainly, I like to chop into tracks quite a lot. Got a track from Bon Dizzy, FX plugin and vocals. Yeah, I like to use again. One of my favourites on vocals is Sound Toys, the Filter Freak, I think it's called. That can be quite good. But again, just pitching up, using the transient thing as well, and just kind of it's messing with them really, pitching up, pitching down. By the transient thing, so I should show you what I mean. Going to a different mode on your transient and playing with the full, pitching it up and play with the full. You can make a male voice sound female and vice versa with that kind of trick. Darby, dealing with creative block. Probably watched Netflix for a while. Not do music for a while. It's probably quite good. Just don't stress. Everyone gets creative block. It's a natural part of creating, I think. And listen to music. Go out, listen to your DJs, listen to your friends playing, etc. Listen to other music. Listen to your CDs with your favourite bands and stuff. Just keep your mind going, occupied musically, and it'll always come back. The flow will always come back. I was just mentioning a few bits about arrangement. Just to try and maintain your kind of energy really, because in this track it's got a few different bass lines. So I'm going to play it now, and then I'll just say a few things about how I think the arrangement did and how it worked as we go. And I guess by then we'll be pretty much wrapping up if in case there's any more questions. So here we go. Start again. I'll also do a bit of soloing and stuff of certain things as I mentioned. So coming in, simple bit of beat, not too long in the kind of introduction. Got a question from Theo's. I just mix down Theo's, I will just carry on going through the track and EQing and mixing down and just tinkering really until I can't be any happier with it, and then I will just not make it too hot, maybe pitch it down a couple of dB on the master, export at 32-bit 96 or 2496 or 24 16-bit and send it off for mastering. Request to play through. So I'll carry on playing through. So I'm going to play it now. Again, as I was saying, not too long an intro on this. When you're sending off tracks to people to get signed up, it's usually better to get into the meat as soon as you can. little fill there. And then in with the bass line. You can hear them two bass lines working there. First bit of something. And you can hear kind of how I've tried to make the sounds complement each other. You know, on, off, feel, little bit of bass, open hi-hat that was in that loop. All these different hats doing their job, just so everything has a bit of interplay to keep the track rolling on. Realised I didn't talk much about panning, but I do pan things ever so slightly just to give them a bit of space as I'm doing the kind of finalisation process in the mix. Drum fill, a bit of that effect sound, and then a little bit of pad here. Fill, and then into the next bass line, bringing that open hi-hat in. Yeah, so using my kind of favourite bass stuff like Massive and the Crit and Guitari, sub-boom bass. Sometimes I use the bass as an Ableton as well. One of my tracks before I used with an Ableton. My track Serotonin Serenade, so I use the bass line sound from Ableton. And then bouncing them down into audio and then, you know, playing with them and using the plugins like I mentioned here, Max Bass, the compressors, etc. Now here in the bit of the track we can hear this sample here, where I use a transient master to cut into that a lot, just to get a more rhythmic kind of effect. You know, I've taken out some of the snare and hat sounds here just to make it drop down and sit a bit longer. Right down to the basic sample. I'm just preparing here for the entry of the next space. Again, arrangement wise, it does a few different things, this track, just to kind of keep things going. Now we're into this section with these basses. You can hear the effect of that. The pad's about to come in soon, plus this extra high bass that we use. That's that sound. Again, it's just, you know, taking the low out, just got it there in the background, but it just adds a bit of energy as it goes. Pad's coming in. Like 4 minutes or so in the track, which would usually be the point where I start to think about breaking it down. If it's going to have a breakdown, that would be kind of where it needs to be. And then taking out the hats and letting it breathe a little bit. Again, this can work quite well at this stage of the track. Extra fills coming in. We'll be on these fill channels I showed you before. So you can see that's the kind of breakdown coming in now. Anyone has any more questions about the session, about the track or anything? I'm aware we've been going nearly an hour, so I guess I intend just to kind of drop this track as it drops and we can listen to the rest. And if there's any more questions, I'll probably wrap up at the end. Cheers. Promo NxT@gmail.com. Reverb on the bass. No, decent amount of decay and sustain just to keep the kind of shred throughout the phrase, but no actual reverb in the mix. How long producing? Production wise, it took a while before I would have the confidence to play my tracks when I was DJing. However, a lot of that was about having the right kind of place to play them, which became our place, our part of use. It took a while, took a few years, definitely, before I felt like I was ready to really play them out a lot. And how long was I producing before I got my first record signed? Probably 3-4 years. I mean, I've been making music all my life, but if I'm about producing this intended style, these kind of sounds, 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. I would say. I want to say one last thing I did at the end here. Here, listen. I lowered the tempo just to make it do that kind of thing at the end. Just lowered the tempo in automation because then it would pull down the pitch of the sample and just make it sound a bit like a kind of record slowing down. I thought that was a nice touch. Well, really thank you to everyone who signed in to that. Like I said, the last time I did this, it kind of went on. So yeah, we did the same this time. So I guess it shows I enjoy it too. So nice one. Camdia, some creative process when writing bass lines. Combination of creative process. Okay, step one. Throw some notes onto a MIDI part. Dial up a sound that starts to sound right with them notes, and then in that MIDI part, then start to pull those notes around and play with the pitches until you find something that's working with your kick. Creative process. Generally, then probably delete that because you think it's that rubbish and start again. And probably do that 2, 3, 4 times before you find the one that you feel is going to be the one that you work on for the rest of the day. And certainly, like I was saying at the start, my process at the moment is very much revolving around a kick and bass until I feel I've got that groove to keep the track, some momentum going, before I add anything else. Maybe just add a simple hat and clap or something just to give you a bit of impetus, but certainly try to really get that track grooving in the bottom end before adding much else. glad some of you enjoyed it. Like I say, I enjoyed it too. I think we'll leave it just about there. Thank you very much. Bye.